Welcome to Live with Crabtree Coaching Collaborative, your compass for educational excellence. Now, as instructional leaders, we want to avoid that overwhelming sense of burnout and exhaustion because of all of those different competing priorities. We want to avoid our staff members becoming utterly frustrated because they cannot keep up with the demands. And let's face it, we want to avoid just having that lack of confidence because we don't feel like we're making any progress. That's why you're here, right? My name is Alyssa Crabtree, and with over 16 years of experience, I am here to help you gain clarity, amplify your learning like never before, and hone in on intentionality. This is where transformation begins, and excellence is always the standard. Remember, we are in this together, my friends, so let's do this thing. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for tonight because we have a dear friend of mine, Allison Bullard, is joining us. Allison is the founder of Get Your Life Together. And let me tell you, educators, right now is the time we need to get our life together. So, Allison, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Alyssa, for inviting me. This is super awesome.
Well, and you know what? You are here just in time because right now, all of my educator friends were at home. It is the holiday break, and a lot of us are thinking about the new year. How are we going to start off this spring semester? And so I think this conversation is just what we need. So before we even dive in, go ahead and tell our audience who you are and how you came up with Get Your Life Together.
Awesome. So, like Alyssa said, I'm the founder of Get Your Life Together LLC. So, I teach online courses and I host a podcast that helps individuals develop their mental health, their physical health, and their financial health. And I do this by digging to the root of your struggles and then help you define your goals and then fully develop a plan to help reach those. And I came up with Get Your Life Together LLC basically like 12 years ago. I've been in the military since then. I've been mentoring teens and soldiers, and I figured out that there was a need while I was mentoring. And it was really interesting because when I'd start talking to people, I would be saying something and then they're like, "Well, wait a minute, hold up. Like that's not something I knew about. Can you explain that to me?" And then for me, it was always, "Well, yeah, that's just something, I kind of researched and I thought everybody else knew." And then here we are now with Get Your Life Together because there's a lot of foundational knowledge that people need to know.
Yeah. And Allison, one thing that I love about that is your experience is not just with your friends or your family. Like you have that experience too, but you've been coaching soldiers. And, when I think of our military and we have people who enroll when they're 18 or 19, they're at a younger age. And then when they get out, it's kind of like, okay, what do I do financially? How do I help support my mindset? I feel the same way with teachers. And there's a lot of, you go to college, you learn how to be a teacher, you're thrown to the wolves, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I handle this? And how do I handle this? So I love that you support mental wellness, physical wellness, and financial wellness. And I've already mentioned educator burnout is real. Right now, we are seeing teachers leave the profession left and right. So I want can you tell us a little bit about how we can take small steps to get us out of this overwhelm rut?
Absolutely. So, something that a lot of people don't understand is that burnout is the result of just prolonged stress and overwhelm. That is when you get like you've bypassed all the signs of stress and it ends up calling for a much more stringent like recovery effort. So, like taking a hot bath or relaxing on the couch is not going to be sufficient when you get to that point. So, what I tell people is you have to have an understanding at this point that you are going to have focus and dedication to beat that level of burnout. So,
Mhm.
there's a couple of actions that you can take, and something that I struggled with for the longest time, and once I finally started prioritizing myself, I realized that it wasn't me being selfish, it was just that, me prioritizing myself, basically. So, one of the first actions you can take, put yourself as number 1. I know that's difficult for a lot of people, but it is absolutely necessary for you to put yourself first. That's making sure you get enough sleep, that you're eating the right things, and then taking some time for yourself as well.
Yeah. I think, and that's huge, especially as educators. I think we're programmed to be martyrs, and and I also think, there's this huge, don't be a narcissist, don't be a selfish, don't be this, but we have to prioritize ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the difference of being selfish versus prioritizing yourself is that I think it kind of got misconstrued, like when it became like a huge topic, I think on TikTok and whatnot. Prioritizing yourself means that you're doing it for you, but you're not doing it at the expense of others. And then that's
Mm.
where the other, being selfish comes into play. So as long as it's not at the expense of others, then you're doing great.
Allison, that's huge. It's not at the expense of other. That's like a huge light bulb for me because it actually is for the benefit of others. Like my family is going
Absolutely.
to benefit if I'm at my best self. My work will benefit. Teachers will benefit if I'm at my best self. So that's a huge aha for me. Thank you for that. That's pretty good. So, you do talk a lot about building a strong foundation for yourself, for your well being. What does it mean to have a strong foundation? What does that look like? Like, how do I know if I have a strong foundation?
So a strong foundation for well-being is built by three main pillars, and that's where we talked about earlier. That's how I built this business is mental, physical, and financial health. These three pillars basically make up your entire personal world, right? So developing each pillar allows your world to balance. And I like to think about it as like a three-legged stool. So you have a weakness in one leg and either strains the other two or it just causes the stool to fall over completely.
Yeah.
So in order to describe what that strong foundation looks like, it's basically a positive outlook on life. You trust in yourself to handle any situation pretty much. You feel great physically, you have enough energy to make it through the day completely.
Mhm.
And then if life surprises you with like a broken window from the neighbor's kids playing or something, or there's a yearly expense that you forgot, then it's no problem. You will exude confidence because you are well equipped to handle anything that life throws your way.
Yeah. I think it was Maya Angelou who said that you can tell a lot about someone by the way they handle tangled Christmas lights. And you think about that. You had mentioned, if when stress comes your way, how are you going to handle it? And if you flip the lid, maybe you're a imbalanced three-legged stool. So
Absolutely.
thinking of that, like how can I know I have my three foundations, my three pillars. If I'm how will I know though? Like, is there a way that I can tell, ooh, this one's stronger than the other?
Absolutely. I mean, you're basically going to you'll feel like kind of what's going on. If you're waking up and you're barely making it throughout the day without having to have like that second pot of coffee, then you
Oh
know
yeah.
that there's something going on like physically there, right?
Uh-huh.
Trust me, I've been there, done that. Military, I will drink 3 pots in a day, trust me.
Uh-huh.
But then like another example, ooh, this is a personal one for me. I got an extreme anxiety opening up my phone to look at my bank account. for some reason, so that's where I knew that it was already like it was starting to teeter just a little bit, was because I would open my phone and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. But then once I got the confidence, that my account wasn't going to be zero, there was not going to be any negative numbers in there. I start building that confidence, and it started going away. So I knew that that was starting to develop a little bit better, right? So it's more of a, I don't want to say kind of just like how you feel, but that's pretty much the only way that you can tell.
Yeah.
So if there's something that is bothering you mentally, sometimes it could show up as something physical, like you're not getting enough sleep because you're having some crazy dreams about stuff. But that's where trying to dig to the root of that problem comes into play.
Yeah. That's what my educator friends, I want you to give me like a big hell yeah in the chat. Or if you are watching the replay, still put it in the chat that how many of you get that knot in your stomach when you click the email button on your phone? Like you're just like, I gotta check this. Or you see those emails coming in and you're just like, oh, especially right now, we're on a break. And the day or two before we go back, there is always, no matter how, because I love my job. Do not get me wrong. I love education. I love teaching, all the things. But there's something about those 2 days before we go back from a long break where I dread that email. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we go. But Allison, I will say I've had some conversations recently with principals and instructional coaches, and they're very hard on themselves right now. I'm getting a lot of, Alyssa, I don't feel like I'm moving the needle. I don't feel like I'm making a difference. And this breaks my heart because I know they are doing the best that they know how to do, and they are working their rear ends off. So, what are some strategies that people can employ to block out the noise and to be their best selves? Because there's a lot of negative talk going on right now with education on many sides. So, what are some strategies they can use?
So I know that for you, this is, this was kind of painful for you to hear, but for me, I smirked because this is something that I have dealt with. Because with me being in the military for as long as I have, I'm now an NCO. So this one definitely hits home for me. So if you feel that you're failing as a leader, that tells me that you are not failing as a leader. A leader only fails when they don't care.
Ah,
So the fact that they already feel like they're like, oh my gosh, this is scary for me. I feel like I'm not doing enough. You will already have a leg up because you care about it. So you want to try to do your best at that job because you care about it. So
yeah.
yeah, it's you're already fighting that. So that's a positive there. So a lot of that noise is, for some people, it's that mean little voice that's in the back of their head, right?
Mhm.
So you will begin to believe in yourself when you combat that voice and replace it with what's actually true. So, like for instance, that little mean voice, you aren't smart enough to lead a school. Like, what were you trying to do? And then what you do is you hear that and you're like, okay, give it its space, right? And then combat it with, I clearly have a bachelor's, have a master's, I have a PhD, so that's absolutely not true, right? Or that little voice also says something like, well, you aren't capable of doing it. Well, I clearly am, because I wouldn't have fought for this position thinking that I couldn't. So that mean little voice, what that comes from is from us growing up and not creating a foundation of confidence, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I even think, a lot of the people that I've been speaking to, they're probably in their late 30s, early 40s, some even in their 50s that I've spoken to. When we reach this certain age, how can we start to build that voice, though, of encouragement when for so long, for 40 years, I might have been telling myself I can't do it? What's one small step that our educational leaders, our teachers, anyone in education right now can start telling themselves to truly believe it?
anytime you hear that little voice come up, you have to acknowledge it and then give that thought the opposite version and the more correct version at that. Most of the time, that little voice tells us something that is completely off the wall, that's not even true. And as long as you respond to it and you say, well, that's not true because of this, you are already combating that thought. And that will start helping you build that confidence there.
Yeah, I like that, Allison. It's true. We have to acknowledge it, but kind of push back. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
heck no, I am a badass. Like I
Exactly.
can go through that. So let's talk about physical health because we've done a little bit of mindset talk, physical health. And this is something that I mean, educators are tired. They're exhausted and they're running around all day. They're chasing kids. Or, I mean, if you have ever seen a teacher manage 43 eighth graders in a classroom, like that's to me already a physical challenge. However, we know that movement is so important. So, why is movement essential for educators and how can we get unstuck so that we make time to get physical?
So I completely understand this. So, you know me personally. I work 55 plus hours per week at the current, like my regular job, right? So then I come home and then in my free time, I'm spending it on my business. And then somehow the army scooches in and decides to add a little touch of havoc for extra flavor. So anybody, first of all, anybody who is able to wrangle 43 8-year-olds, that's a superpower.
Oh no,
Okay.
girl, it's eighth graders.
Good
That's
Lord.
13 year
Oh,
olds.
eighth graders. Lord have mercy on my soul. I mean, super power. I'm talking. Okay. So fantastic job with doing that. So exercise is proven to help fight stress and depression by getting your blood flowing and moving oxygen throughout the body and getting it up to your brain. So, and then now that you mentioned, with the eighth graders, what if you were to get them involved with it as well? Like make it a point in the day to get them up and kind of get moving with them type of situation. That way you're getting like 15 minutes of activity for yourself, but then you're also helping them get it worked out.
Yeah.
So now that you
I
mentioned
will
that, I
tell you
just thought
though,
about
as
that.
soon as you say that, I can feel people on the other end going, but how do you get them back in control after that? And I know, like I've seen it, but I will tell you, there is tons of research out there on brain breaks and getting students to stand up and be active. Girl, yes, it is important.
I'm glad you mentioned that too. So, what I normally recommend to people who aren't teachers, I'll say that, just find a 15-minute window in your day. And what you're going to do is you're going to dedicate that 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, dedicate that to yourself and start extremely small. Because I know a lot of people get stuck when they're like, ooh, I'm going to go work out, or I'm going to exercise. They automatically think that they need to have a whole hour and that they've got to put everything to the side. We got to change clothes. We got to go to the gym. We got to do all that.
Yeah.
Not the case. Set aside 15 minutes, plan it in your schedule. Do not budge from that 15 minutes. So you're going to dedicate that to yourself and just start out with some very easy, like dynamic stretching. And what dynamic stretching is it helps get that blood flow and everything going, but then it also exercises you a little bit, right? So you're not starting out too much and you're preventing injury by starting out slow because I don't want you to put yourself in the hospital or anything or pull a hammy. You don't want none of that.
Yeah.
Okay? So once once getting that 15 minutes in your schedule becomes easier, then you start increasing it up to 20 minutes, up to 25 minutes, and then so on, right? So then when you start doing that and it becomes that dedicated time for yourself, something to look forward to is that starting out, it's going to feel like it's an inconvenience. But then after some time, you're going to start seeing improvements in your focus and quicker thinking. So, like you just said, there's a lot of research on that, right? So it's going to do the same thing for the students if you're comfortable with, wrangling in those 43 um, 13-year-olds. So, and then something else I always tell people too is because it's very hard to get somebody from that, or to get somebody from, I don't want to say on the couch, but like not exercising regularly to exercising regularly. Newton said it best, a body in motion stays in motion, right?
Mm,
So you start looking forward to that 15-minute break when you start scheduling it, and then you'll skip it one day and you're like, dang, I forgot to do that yesterday. Let me make sure I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to make sure I do it today, because that's going to be your you time for about 15 minutes, and it allows you to take that break.
yeah. I go for a walk jog every morning, and it's one of my favorite parts that, like, I am off the rest of the day if I don't do it. And you want to talk
Mhm.
about exhausted at the end of the day. when I if I don't start my day with something, by the end of the day, I'm really exhausted. Um,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of educators who have work induced health problems. I work alongside teachers who wear heart monitors because their blood, and like, they're having heart problems or they're having blood pressure problems because of the profession. And so more than ever, that movement is so important. Um, so I want to talk, we've talked a little bit about the mental health. We've talked a little bit about physical health. Let's get into just a little bit about financial health, because this can be a very sore subject. And I've opened up to you before about how I will avoid going to my website, my bank's website, because I just want to avoid it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it. And I'm getting out of that, especially now running a business. I have had to. But what can we start doing as educators to become financially healthy?
Okay, so for educators to become financially healthy.
Or just anyone? Like, what do
Yeah.
I need to start doing?
So a lot of people have heard this in the past. You will hear financial advisors and everybody say that you need to start out by creating a budget. And a lot of people roll their eyes and they're like, well, I hear them say that all the time, but I don't really need a budget. I need to know what to do with my money. The problem with skipping the budget step is that you don't know where your money is going, and you don't know how to find the leaks that your money is going through. So, for instance, there's a lot of people that I have worked with in the past that have gotten like subscription boxes, for instance. Like they're making a good amount of money, and then they're like, well, at the end of the month, I have got like negative 20 in my bank account. And I'm like, well, let's lay everything out. Let's put it all on the table. Let's see what in the world is going on. So we get their income put together. We figure all that out. And then we start putting their expenses together. And then we start going through those bank statements and credit card statements to see what they've been spending. And a lot of times it's subscription boxes, or what was it that I had not too long ago? Somebody forgot that they had like Weight Watchers or something that they had subscribed to,
Oh,
and that
yeah.
was like a good $35 a month. And they were like, "Hey, what is this?" And then we're going through there, and I recognized the little tagline that's next to it, and I was like, "You're on Weight Watchers? Like, more power to you, by all means. I love Weight Watchers. I've done it and it works. But if you're not using it, cancel that subscription. That's
Yeah.
$35. That's water bill for me. I don't know about
Yeah.
anybody else, but yeah. So if you create a budget and you start kind of focusing on those finances and figure out if you're leaking money anywhere, then that will help you start getting everything in and trying to get everything, I don't want to say rounded out, but everything organized. So then you can start planning, okay, well, now I've got an extra $200 a month. I'm going to start putting that into my emergency fund.
Yeah.
When you start, when you have that plan and then you have that organization, you start to build confidence, and looking at your bank statement becomes less scary at that point.
Yeah. And I love that, Allison, because it really is a lot. I talk a lot about goal setting on campuses and how you can't just slap a band-aid on things. We have to find the root cause. And you said it beautifully. You have to find your leaks. Like, where are your financial leaks? That's going to get you to your root cause, because slapping a bunch of band-aids on something still isn't going to solve the problem. And I have 100% been guilty of a Weight Watchers subscription gone way too long when I wasn't using
For it.
it.
I
But
love it. I absolutely love Weight Watchers.
I do too. But therefore, I wasn't using it. It was like a year and I was still paying for it. And I was like, oh, I need to cancel this. And
That sounds like me and my what is it, Planet Fitness subscription.
yes. And so really check what are those I guess disposable income, but really they don't need to be disposable. Like I needed that money and it had slipped. And because I was avoiding my bank statements, I wasn't catching it. And so I think that I love, Allison, what you do, because I think there's a lot of shame that goes around finances and it's hard for us to deal with that, but it's so important that we address it. And so I appreciate that. Now, I do know you have a webinar coming up where you're actually going into this a lot more. When is this happening? Give us some details.
So the free live webinar, I have one tomorrow night, December the 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Okay.
So
I'm
it'll be
saying
7
Eastern
p.m.
time hard.
Central.
Yes, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time, because I had a couple people on, was it Tuesdays, that were like, oh, I thought this was at 8 p.m. Central. And I was like, definitely EST. Sorry about that. So yes, I have one tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And then I also have my last one, my last live webinar is on the 28th, also at 8 p.m.
Okay. So the 22nd and the 28th, I did put the link in the show notes. Does that link, they can register for either one using that link?
Absolutely. Yes, there will be a drop down at the bottom and they can just select either one that they want to. And that link should be https:// getyourlifetogether.ck.page/webinar.
Okay. It'll be in the
That's a
show notes.
mouthful.
And then, Allison, where can they find you and where can they listen to your podcast?
So my podcast, I've actually expanded the podcast over the past couple of weeks.
Ooh.
So the podcast, I started out on Spotify and now I have it on Google Podcasts and what is it, iHeart, I believe? Yeah,
Okay.
iHeart. So I've put it on both of those as well. And it's under Get Your Life Together LLC.
Excellent.
So that's the podcast portion. And then I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn as well. And if you search Get Your Life Together LLC or you do the at Get Your Life Together LLC, you're going to find me.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison, so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you. And I'm going to have you on the show again. So we'll dive into this a little deeper. And audience, even if you're catching the replay, I want you to go ahead, sign up for this webinar. It is free and there's tons of valuable information in it. So hopefully I'll see you tomorrow at Allison's webinar because I'll be there. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Bye. Thank you, Alyssa.